Alright, let's start with the obvious question. Why is a Chilean boy band dressed in neon hoodies and ripping through choreography that looks like it was pulled straight out of Seoul? And why are kids in Santiago screaming their lungs out over music that mixes Spanish, English, and Korean pop vibes? The answer isn't just about BTS selling out stadiums or Latin America's obsession with Korean barbecue. This is about something way bigger. This is about a cultural remix. And honestly, it's blowing my mind. Look, I'll admit, I used to think K-pop's global dominance was a one-way street. Korea drops a banger, the world dances to it, end of story. But what's happening in Chile? Totally different playbook. These kids aren't just consuming Hallyu, they're hijacking it. They're taking the glossy, hyper-polished K-pop formula, those $100,000 music videos, the military-level choreo, the obsession with concept, and they're smashing it together with reggaeton beats, Chilean slang, and vintage PlayStation graphics. Why? Because they're not trying to be BTS. They're trying to build something that feels like them. And that shift, that's not just fans turning into artists. It's a whole generation rewriting the rules of cultural influence. Let's talk about QARE for a second. These 6 guys started out as K-pop stans, right? They learned Korean songs, they studied the aesthetics, they probably spent hours dissecting Bangtan bombs on YouTube. But here's the twist, they didn't stop at imitation. They asked, how do we make this ours? So they write lyrics in 3 languages, they sample slang that'd confuse a Seoul teenager, and they throw retro video game glitches into their visuals. And it's working. They've got fans in Tokyo, Sao Paulo, and, wait, Singapore? That's not a fan base. That's a Trojan horse. Because what they're doing isn't K-pop light. It's a hybrid. And hybrids, they are evolutionary powerhouses. But here's what most people miss, this isn't just about music. It's about infrastructure. Chile's capital now has 50 Korean restaurants in one neighborhood. Korean language classes are exploding, thanks partly to K-dramas and K-pop lyrics, sure, but also because of ambition. Teens in Santiago aren't just learning Korean to understand their biases latest V life. They're studying it because they see a ladder to global relevance. And that ladder's being built by groups like QARE, who prove you don't have to be Korean to master the K-pop playbook. You just have to be relentless. Which makes me wonder, is Chile becoming the Silicon Valley of Latin pop? Because what's happening here feels less like cultural appropriation and more like appropriation 2.0. A place where influence isn't stolen, it's upgraded. And let's address the elephant in the room, why does this matter? Because for decades, global pop culture has been a pyramid. The US and Korea sit at the top, everyone else scrambles below. But QARE's success isn't niche. They're touring Brazil. Their fans are translating Chilean slang for each other voluntarily. This isn't a pyramid anymore, it's a network. A web where Santiago, Mexico City, and Bogotá aren't just consumers but co-creators. And if that trend keeps accelerating, we might be witnessing the death of the cultural center. Imagine a world where the next global boy band isn't manufactured in LA or Seoul, but in Santiago. How wild is that? Honestly, though, this raises a deeper question, when does inspiration become innovation? QARE still uses the K-pop playbook, self-produced content, fan engagement, visual storytelling, but they're layering their identity on top. Is this the future of pop music? A constant remix of global influences, where authenticity isn't about where you're from, but how you personalize the universal. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment, do you see this Chile-Korea fusion as a passing trend, or the start of something revolutionary. Because if the Korean wave taught us anything, it's that the next big thing never looks like the last one.